Is Father Stanley with us? Okay, what did you get from the lecture of today? Can you do a little summary of what that? Okay, let me call on Peter. Father Stanley, would you like to have something to say?
Father, excuse me.
Would you like to share what you learned today? Or do you have any question?
Yes, Father. For me, you explain a little fast, Father. And
Sorry.
you it's straight on the main point what you want to share. For example, you explain many example, but the main point you want to emphasize on this. So slowly, slowly, one by one, talk about this one. This one, Father. Okay.
You want me to do the summary with the most important points that we discussed?
Yes,
Okay.
Father. One point or two point. During your explanation or exploring the methods of your PowerPoint notes, Father.
Can you do it yourself?
It's
Or maybe we could
difficult,
ask one.
difficult for you also.
Maybe we could ask one of your classmates to do that, to recap what we learned.
Yes,
Peter, can you do that, Peter? Where is Peter?
I'm here, Father.
Yeah. Can you do a recap of what we talked about? Maybe it would help you if you do a recap, because the second half of the class is yours to work on, isn't it? So that you may be able to clarify what you understood and what you do not understand. Maybe it would be good for you to do a recap for every end of the class. For example, what I have learned today are the following. Okay, I'm going to do a recap, for example. Okay, what we are talking about is the idea that when we speak of ethics and morality, they do change. Okay, especially in the way we experience them in our lives as cited by students, in our family, in the way we appreciate things, in our society, forms of leadership, or in the way we appreciate this in the whole period of globalization, there are changes. And then what we try to do is to be able to get somebody who could be an interlocutor, okay, a dialogue partner. His name is Alasdair McIntyre, for us to have a much better appreciation of how particular traditions of ethical rationality undergoes development. Okay? And then it says the basic presupposition is that particular traditions of ethical rationality characterized by sociality, by particularity, by historicity, and by narrativity is necessarily undergoing particular changes. How does that happen? It happens, okay, in the evolution of particular ways of thinking from the period of constitution, passing through a period of crisis, epistemological crisis, that eventually gives way to new reformulation and new constitution. Okay? And we see that that exactly is happening also in fundamental moral theology, as demonstrated by James Keenan in the article he wrote describing fundamental moral theology as a tradition, okay, which he says is also a product of a community process of discernment, okay, and we are actually we form part of that discernment, and that such process has authorities, the normal theological framework. Do you understand? And then, so when you want to raise critical questions, you have to be able to step on their shoulders and begin to listen to the authorities and, you know, see whether what they say remains sustainable, remains believable, remains relevant in our context. That may lead you to a reformulation of our ways of looking at reality and ways of making sense of what is right and what is good in society. That summarizes it. Is that clear? Okay. Now, when you read the text that I wrote, it's going to bring you to a nitty-gritty discussion. You know, backing it up substantially with a lot of philosophers, okay, that he was able to make use to be able to advance his point in each of those different levels. Okay, is that clear? Now, any question? Any other question? Yes, Thaddeus. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. No, we are talking about tradition, per se. And when you talk about tradition, that may include our ways of relating, okay, sustained by particular forms of rationality. For example, the way we organize ourselves economically, politically, culturally, religiously, environmentally. That's already considered. But that is the reason why uh, we could say that the whole socialization process as one characteristic, which is sociality, in a way, is applicable to all of those different ways of organizing ourselves in our forms of relationships, economic, political. So even, for example, when you talk about tradition, as socially embodied, it is something that you describe in terms of economic, political, culture. But I don't have to be specific in those areas. But what we were trying to discuss are the characteristic modes of any tradition. Because describing the characteristic modes of the tradition becomes the basis for us to say that such tradition necessarily have to undergo constant changes for that matter. It changes because it's part of the socialization process. And every period of time would have different socialization process. So historicity is also highlighted, okay? And it happens in a particular tradition, isn't it? Okay? According to the account, to the narrative of that particular tradition. So those qualifications that we actually pointed out had so much to do in the way we could speak of tradition as something that constantly changes, that develops. Those become those items that we talk about in a way set conditions or possibilities for such development to happen. Okay, is that clear? So when you talk about geography, you're talking about particularity. Particularity is geographically located, a particular type, a particular people, a particular culture. Okay. Any other question?
Clarification, Father.
Yes, please.
It is regarding about the development of tradition in of ethical rationality, Father. And when a certain tradition encounters crisis, is it a sign that that particular tradition has to do some reconstitution in order to respond to the ongoing problem in the community?
Yeah. Okay. For example, in the Catholic Church, there were crises that happened, isn't it? For example, during the time of the Reformation, when Martin Luther actually raised critical questions against the church, particularly in practice of the indulgences, okay, for which you pay a lot of donations and all that, so that you may be able to have uh, less time in purgatory, etc. Martin Luther raised critical questions about the church. Okay, that could have been that was a critical period. Okay, two things during this particular crisis. Okay, Martin Luther could have stayed in the church and bring about possibility of changes within the whole tradition of the church by being an insider. But because he actually had encountered a lot of opposition in his raising critical questions about tradition, he eventually decided to put out. Okay? And there began the period of Reformation that became responsible for so many difficulties, conflicts, and religious wars in Europe. Okay? One would therefore say that should not have happened. That should have been, managed properly. We are not blaming Luther. We could also be blaming, the responsibles in the church during the time because they were not open to the possibility of these critical questions that have been raised against the church. Okay? Like the church had to, in a way, found herself to be defensive and it just rejected Hitler. But there was another crisis that happened during the time of Francis of Assisi. Francis of Assisi also found a lot of problems in the way the church was living its life and was giving witness to the gospel of Jesus. So what did he do? He remained inside and tried to set examples by witness of life of poverty. Okay? And that brought about some changes somehow within the structure and system of the church for which he was called a saint. Do you understand? So crisis could always have been the opportunity for a reformulation of new things. Okay? But it depends on how people take it. There are people who take it, they're moving out and booting out of that tradition. Labas ka ng seminary, you just leave the seminary, you leave the priesthood because you're not happy about it, and then you do not participate in the real transformation of that tradition. But there are people who would say, I will stay because I will participate in the transformation of that tradition as an insider. You understand? And that example I gave is that of St. Francis of Assisi, okay? St. Vincent de Paul, and many different saints in the history of the church that was responsible for bringing about transformations, development, and changes, and conversions within the church. Okay? Is that clear?
Yes, Father. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
Father,
yes.
can I ask
Can
question?
I take you indulgence for another 5 minutes? Just to be able to entertain questions. Now, if, for example, you don't want to continue, you just leave it, okay? But for those who would like to ask more questions, you can stay.
Can I ask question, Father?
Go ahead.
Actually, like you said, that's our teaching of the church is based on the tradition, right? And
yes.
Tradition is also is good because, of course, we have to follow the tradition, especially the faith tradition. But do you think that the tradition sometimes put our church in a dilemma? For example, like nowadays is very difficult sometimes. What I observed that, for example, like in my parish in Vietnam, before I observed that we had a parish priest. He is very, very. I think the way he's living is very tradition. So of course he's good because he can form others parishioners in a way of good according to him. But the problem is the young people nowadays, they want to change. So of course they follow him because maybe they are afraid.
Okay. Wait.
But actually, the young people, they want to change and they want to live the way like what they want to do. And this is very important because nowadays we have the church is speaking on the young people, just how to bring people to the young people to our church. So what do you think?
Okay. Okay. So when you speak of tradition, it does not, you don't have to identify it right away to a certain form of conservatism. The reason why I was trying to talk about tradition in this way as a living tradition that undergoes changes. Okay, it is a living tradition that it cannot get stuck up. Okay, and within the development of tradition, you can always discern two movements. On the one hand, is the movement that pushes for change, but another movement is pulling, okay, to keep something. And I think it is important to keep both in tension. Okay, they are in creative and dynamic tension. There should be elements in our tradition that should push for change and development as it becomes constantly relevant, okay, meaningful, and responsive to the changing times. So there will always be elements in tradition that would say, let's bring about changes. There should be another way of looking at it, etc. There is a push, okay? But there will always be elements in tradition that pulls. You may be pushing it too much. Let's hold on and examine and check and discern further and see whether what you're actually pushing for actually to some extent is still somehow anchored with something that is most fundamental in the way we believe things. Okay? Are there core when you talk about tradition of development of tradition, you could actually have different models. Okay? There are those who talk about tradition in terms of cumulative change. Accumulative change is like a snowball, snow, rolling down the hill, and as it rolls down, it actually takes on more snow, okay, and then it becomes bigger, etc. Okay, but the change is accumulating new areas that need to be incorporated so that it may be able to adjust and be able to connect with the constantly changing realities. Apparently, Alistair McIntyre follows this model, accumulative change. That's the reason why you would always speak. Miss him is the superior tradition because it is a superior tradition because it's not of new elements itself as it actually undergoes changes in an organic way. Okay? And I think this forms part also with the basic intuition coming from Cardinal Henry Newman. Have you heard about him? Okay, he is a very famous uh, theologian of the late 18th century. Okay, and 19th century rather, 19th century, and he actually wrote a very celebrated work, okay, essays on the development of dogma. Okay, he was talking more about dogma, doctrines, theology. You're talking about ethics, no? But here, Cardinal Henry Newman talks more about organic development or change. So you have a basic kernel of truth, but it actually, in a way, incorporates new things. Okay, as a seed growing, okay, like into a plant, into a tree that bears fruit. Okay, that is organic, and then you would actually cite elements of criteria by which you would be able to say that the kind of development that we're undergoing is a good and healthy development or a kind of a change that is corrupted, that actually leads to our own self-destruction as a tradition. So there are even during the 19th century, we already have somebody who is respected by the church in the name of Cardinal Henry Newman, who actually is talking about organic development of doctrine of the church. Okay, that is as far as cumulative development is concerned. But there are those who would speak about development so much in terms of accumulated change, but they would talk about development in terms of rapture. What do you mean by rapture? that change happens almost in a very radical way. That what happened in the reformulation is a completely new tradition that cannot be connected in any way with the previous tradition in its articulation. Okay? That is the reason why, for example, people debate whether Vatican II is a change understood as rupture or a change understood as accumulative change. Okay? That, changing on the basis of the basic presuppositions that are still maintained and to which we are anchored in the way we experience development and change. Is that clear? So it really depends on how one takes his position in understanding change on the one hand. But I see that it is important that in the development of tradition, there will always be an element of creative tension, of some pushing to make sure that our beliefs, our ways of thinking, and our own modes of evaluating what is right and what is wrong remains to be relevant and engaging and responsive to our changing times on the one hand. But it is also important that we anchor ourselves to some fundamental beliefs that we cannot just give up. Do you understand? So that is my personal position. Other theologians may have different positions as to this question of debate. Okay? Any more? One more question. We are ending at 10:15. But for those who would like to leave, you can leave already. Now, if there are no more questions, you can all leave.
Father?
Yes.
RC po.
RC, go ahead.
I remember our discussion with Sir Mariano in our philosophy of science when he discussed about this certain Thomas Kuhn, and then he discussed about the scientific revolution. I clearly remember that from a normal science, anomalies would arise.
Yes.
And then out of that, the crisis takes place, and there are reformulation, and there is an emergence of a normal science. But the process is almost radical, that it speaks about a shift of an existing paradigm in such a way that the new normal science is like totally different from the previous one. So I just want to ask about this.
That's why that I was trying to explain to you earlier when I was talking about Thomas Kuhn, that his experience of development is more radical change, because that's why he refers to this as paradigm. When you talk about paradigm, it is a constellation of meanings, okay? That certain things become only meaningful, acceptable within a particular paradigm. But when you move to another paradigm, it's a completely different ways of looking at reality and defining and explaining how things happen within that reality. And therefore, he claims that the new normal or the new system is incommensurable as far as its relationship with the older paradigm is concerned. By the way, system is small, but when you talk about paradigm, it includes everything. And that's the reason why it's a completely different paradigm. And he says, what is there in the new normal is incommensurable. It cannot fit the old normal. But that is one way of understanding development. Okay? But I think MacIntyre only pointed out to Thomas Kuhn just to be able to demonstrate that knowledge evolves and develops. And it is very well evidenced in science, scientific knowledge, but he translates that into into the development of ethical rationality. But I think he will not let go of the fact that there is an accumulative change as well. There are different ways of doing and understanding change, especially. For example, Karl Popper, okay, in the philosophy of science, and I think Thomas Kuhn makes mention of that as well. Okay, there are different modes that that Thomas Kuhn mentioned, but one is Karl Popper actually makes an assumption that the change constantly happens, not through the principle of verification, because in the earlier analytic tradition, especially with Ayer and company, okay, you probably remember, they talk about in terms of verification theory. Karl Popper would say, you can only claim that thing that you observe is true because you could actually verify it with experiments, with evidence, etc. Yan ang sinasabi ni Ayer. Ang tawag nila doon, verification theory. So something is, in a way, assumed to be true when it is verified by experiment, by empirical evidence. Okay? But then according to Karl Popper, okay, he is a Marxist and therefore raises critical question more from the perspective of the negative. And so his theory is not verification theory, but his theory is falsification theory. What does that mean? You can only claim that one thing is true unless it is falsified. Is that clear? You can only claim that what you hold is true only in as much as it is not falsified, which means that you constantly are open to the possibility of being contested and being falsified, and that you should be able to give new possibilities of understanding reality and come up with a new reformulation for that matter. And so he emphasizes the negative dimension of falsification. Like, for example, you can claim that cholesterol, okay, but the research on bad cholesterol, okay, should be eliminated completely, is something that you can hold as true only until it is falsified by another scientific data, okay, and experiment with evidence, empirical evidence that your claim is actually false. So you are falsified. Do you understand? So Karl Popper, of a Marxist origin, would say you cannot hold absolute, claim to what you believe is right or wrong, even empirically, because you have to be able to constantly open. You can only claim that it is true until it is falsified. Am I clear to you?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. One final question. Oh, I think it's okay. You can now. I think we're done. So I'll try to give you already your assignments for the next class, so that you may start thinking through it and reading through the materials. Okay. If there are some of you interested for me to expound on the article that I wrote, which expect on one piece of paper, one page, okay, your own comment and synthesis, then let me know. Let the class dean approach me, and you want to have an extra period for that. If you don't approach me, it's okay. But I have a ready PowerPoint presentation for that. Okay? Okay, thank you.
Father, before you go, Father, we have an observation lang, this class, yes. Father. Maybe today you're not using your ano po? Parang yes. Medyo choppy.
So it should be using.
I don't know, but my brothers also noticed. They just chat in our group that maybe today you're a little bit choppy because maybe you're not using the.
Okay. Then I will use it next time.
Next time. Thank you, Father.
Okay, but generally you were able to follow.
Yes, Father.
Okay. No. Okay. Thank you. Let's end with a prayer. Thank you for your patience
Welcome, Pads.